Thank you. Well, welcome. Welcome to this year's Residency Conference Todd Lecture Series talk. And before we begin, I'd like to just remind folks if you have a cell phone that you could put to vibrate or turn off. And for some of those that are standing, we have plenty of seats in the front if you'd like to come down and join us. Welcome to the Todd Lecture Series for the 2015 Residency Conference. The Todd Lecture Series is named in honor of U.S. Army retired Major General and President Emeritus W. Russell Todd, Norwich class of 1950, and his wife Carol, in gratitude for their dedicated service to Norwich University and the Northfield community. I'd like to also recognize the Todd's daughter and son-in-law, Ellen and John Drew, and the Drew Foundation, who have generously donated resources to Norwich University to fund the Todd Lecture Series in their honor. The program will always be free and open to the public and the Vermont community, as well as the Norwich student body, and is streamed live from the TLS website to our students all around the country and all around the world. So welcome to those who are visiting through the streaming. And we have a bio for Lieutenant General Bowman in the program, and I'll simply start and open the program because he's our guest of honor and turn it over to an old soldier and Norwich University graduate. Thank you.
Good morning. President Snyder, distinguished guests, friends, families, and graduates and students. What an honor it is to be here today. I have to say that I'm a little bit in awe looking back at who previous speakers were for this event. Secretary Rice, General Sullivan and Powell, and now you got some guy named Bowman. So let's define success up front and fast. This is a talk about leadership, and this talk is well worth my time if one thing said or done during this speech positively affects anyone in this room as a leader. One thing that you can put to use. I left this campus years ago. And no one knew back then that Bowman was going to go in the Army and stay. It was pretty much a decided thing that I was going in for 3 years and getting out. That was my commitment. People have said I am a perfect soldier. I don't have an exit strategy. Once I got in the Army, I couldn't leave. It was the soldiers and the civilians that we got the pleasure to work with. But if you asked my parents, my friends, my classmates, if I'd be here doing this today and still be in the Army, the answer would have been no way. The assumption by many is, wow, this kid Bowman must have been a good cadet, he must have been a good student. The answer to both is no. I wasn't a good cadet, I wasn't a good student. Some saw something in me that I didn't see. I thought they were merely expectations and maybe trying to get somebody to reach some potential. Those guys initially were Major Jarvis, Captain Keatsman, Colonel Knight. And so many times in ROTC, they'd grab me and they'd say, hey, that was a good job, or that was a really good job. Now just think how good it could have been if you put a little effort into it. During graduation week, the awards were being handed out. I got called up and they said, hey, be here at this time, you're getting the Distinguished Military Graduate Award. That's something that my dad, a colonel in the Army, wanted so badly for me to get. But it was something I had no desire to get. So I said to the colonel, sir, I didn't earn this award. He said, Bowman, this program is set, get up there and take the award. Roger, sir. Stood up there, got the award, And at the end of the ceremony, I handed it back with the certificate. I didn't earn it, and I didn't want it. That surprised a couple of people with that approach. There's no bending the rules. They are what they are. Plus, Bowman wanted to take the summer off and go back to the golf course and be a grass bum again. I was dating this girl from Vermont, and I wasn't ready to leave and go in the Army. That same situation happened again, less than 2 years later. I was an infantry officer to start because my dad told me don't go infantry and don't go airborne. So I'm at the infantry basic course, and the big thing there is the expert infantry badge. At the end of the course, Captain Cook called me up and he said, "Hey, Bowman, get up in that formation. Take this award." "Sir, I didn't earn it." "You're on the program, get up there and take the award." So I did. And at the end, when things died down, I took it off and I gave it back, and then ensured that it didn't go into my records. I didn't earn it. It's kind of interesting, though, when you look back at it. The reason I didn't get it is because I flunked communications twice. And now look at my job. The #1 communications job for anybody in DOD serving on active duty. Who knew we'd live in a world that we live in today that is so connected? 64 years ago this week, the UNIVAC 1, the Universal Automatic Computer, was unveiled in Washington, D.C. It was the first commercial general use computer. It was developed for the U.S. Census Bureau. It stood 8 feet tall. It weighed 20,000 pounds. It had 5,200 vacuum tubes in it. It took up just under 400 square feet of floor space. It was used to predict the results of the presidential election in 1952. At the time, conventional thinking was Adlai Stevenson was going to win by a narrow margin. This new computer predicted a landslide victory for Eisenhower very, very early in the voting. Media were so concerned about this prediction being so erroneous, so enormously wrong, that they didn't report it. It actually predicted that Eisenhower would win. It cost $1.2 million. It took longer to build than predicted, and the cost was slightly overrun. It was predicted to cost $159,000. Some things never change. Leap forward to 2007. Steve Jobs unveiled the iPhone. He said, "This revolutionary product changes everything." And did it ever? It changed things in ways that he couldn't have predicted, and he didn't predict. People use it to check in at the airport. People use it as their GPS. People use it as a two-factor authentication to log on to systems. It changed our everyday life. And it drove technological advances of today. When Bowman graduated in 1978, we didn't even know what a cyber domain was. We operated with 4 domains: air, land, sea, and space. Cyber domain is arguably the most complex, and it's the glue that connects them all. And it's something that didn't exist back then. We didn't even know what a World Wide Web was. IT and data are everywhere. More data exists today than ever in history. In fact, it's been said that 90% of the data that exists today didn't exist 2 years ago. How do we manage that? How do we take care of it? The number of mobile devices are popping up at a rate faster than mankind reproduces. There isn't a single senior leader today that doesn't get and understand the value of IT. The chief information officer in an organization used to be just a job. Well, now it's a job that spends a whole lot of time talking with the chief operations officer and the chief executive officer for very, very good reason. IT affects everybody today, and there's different views on how it affects us. There's concerns about IT and its effect on us and who's collecting. What is Big Brother doing with those photos from the traffic cameras? What is he doing with the data from our cell phones? What is happening with the data when we use our Safeway card, when we use our Rite Aid card that tracks what we buy and when we buy it so they can better manage inventory? What's happening with that? There are concerns about personal privacy. They're out there. But the concerns in my mind are far more serious in two other areas. The first is intellectual property theft. This equates to the greatest transfer of wealth in the history of mankind. Why would you spend any money on R&D if you can just steal it? It's a real shame that we couldn't take our data that we use to build our most sophisticated stuff and just randomly change pi to 3. And when somebody copies it, say, hey, good luck with that airplane you're going to build there. We hope it works out good for you. But also, another concern is fraud. We are victims, we're tracked, we're exploited, and we need to be smart about how we use the IT. And we'll bounce back to that in just a little bit. Leadership in today's generation. There's some that's different about it, lots that's the same about it. In 2001, Mark Prensky came up with terms called the digital native and the digital immigrant. As leaders today, we need to figure out how to work and reach out and get productivity out of both groups of people, the natives and the immigrants. So let me describe both of them. Digital native is somebody born after 1983. They've had computers in their life since birth. They see them, they use them, they get them, they understand them. It's much the same as one of us playing one of our kids in a video game. They're going to beat you. And the reason they're going to beat you is because we think they do. We don't think about what's going to happen next. They just do what's going to happen next. And that's a true benefit to them. Can I get everybody in this room who was born before 1983 to raise their hand? We are the immigrants. And watching over the years and thinking about the immigrants, we determine, each and every one of us determines on our individual basis, our individual self, what generation immigrant we are. How much we grow, adapt, and adopt, how much we learn, how much we care. My mother-in-law, Gwen, is a little bit over 90. She programs her TV. She's had numerous computers, programs universal remotes, programmed her garage door opener. Now, she's not a couch potato geek. When the snow was too high for the garage door to open this winter, she went out there and shoveled it so she could get to her car to go out. She's on her second iPad because the first one, the software on it wasn't good enough to run the newest versions of Words with Friends. And then you got Miss Smith. She's in her 70s. She has a computer because the kids say, hey, we got to use the computer. We got to do the right thing. We got to stay in touch. You can learn so much off the computer. But she's always running into problems. She calls Freddie, the little kid next door. Hey, Freddie, can you come over here and help me with my computer? Yes, ma'am, I'll be right there. So he comes over and he fixes her computer. He does this very, very frequently every month. And then after months go by, she goes, Freddie, you always come in here and you fix it real quick, and then you leave and go home, and then you come back and fix it. She said, can you tell me what the problem is? And he says, yes, ma'am, it's a pretty common problem. It's an ID 10T. And she says, really? He says, yes, ma'am, write it down. Have a good day. Bye. So she writes it down and reads it, and it says, idiot. She goes, that little shit. So wind that back just a couple of years. This term is not new with using computers. In 2001, after 9/11, our brigade was told, hey, you guys are going to the Middle East and you guys are going to run computer systems, classified and unclassified email for the forces deployed. I said to my boss, sir, we're a tactical unit, we don't do that, fixed signal guys do. I got told we ordered the equipment for you a week ago, you'll have it next week, you have 2 weeks to train on it, you're going out to do it. So we did, and at night I would go around and check on things. And I walked into the help desk, because we're out there, and you say help desk, sounds like a pretty classy place. It's built with plywood, it's got makeshift stuff in it, it's in a tent. So I grabbed the logbook, and I'm looking at it to see what the common problems are. Because by looking at what the common problems are, you can see what things are being used the most. And I keep seeing this IBC for a reason for outage. So I grabbed one of the guys, Boswell was his name, Spec 4. Hey, Bos, what's IBC? He goes, that's idiot behind computer. So you're probably sitting there wondering, so what generation does Bowman fit in? What generation immigrant is he? I'm someplace between Miss Smith and my mother-in-law, Gwen. And I'm happy to be there. But the key is to know and be comfortable, to know how to best use computers, to know how they can enable us not be an anchor that we're connected to. In this increasingly complex world with IT, technology is changing constantly, the complexity is changing constantly, and our world continues to change constantly. There's some leadership lessons that have stood the test of time. They aren't domain specific, and if we could, I'd just like to talk about them. But let me bump back to 1978. I clearly did not get a degree in cyber leadership. The word cyber wasn't even in Bowman's vocabulary, and if it were, I can picture myself struggling to figure out whether it starts with a C or an S. Now, my son is a Corps Squad athlete at West Point, and some of his friends know what I do for a living. Lots of them say, wow, your dad must be great at computers and IT. And Matt will be quick to tell him, no, he's really not that good. I'm better. Now, I purposely told you he's an athlete. He's not a computer guy. He knows how to use them. But his response back to the guys is, my dad knows how to pick people who are good at what they do and then lead them. As part of leadership, we all need to have a leadership philosophy. And this is something that sounds complex, but it's something that should not be overthought, and it's pretty easy. It's your basic fabric. It's part of your DNA. It's part of who you are as a person. And here's a couple of things to think about. The mission is always first, and the people must be taken care of always. We take care of the people, they will take care of the mission. It's about setting and enforcing high standards. When we miss, we get negative results. It's about integrity, and integrity is non-negotiable. Integrity is so easy until it's going to cost us something. And then the choice is up to each of us as an individual, whether we keep our integrity or just throw it away. In the military, it's interesting. You trust everybody who's wearing one of these, and you trust all the DoD civilians from the start. It's not always that way in the rest of the world. We trust until somebody proves to us that we can't trust them. It's about correcting mistakes in private and commending achievements in public. In 1982, I was a company commander. I was a lieutenant. I was at a training base in Georgia, Fort Gordon, Georgia. Every year, we'd send the soldiers home for the holidays. It was called Exodus. And the Army is about hurrying up and waiting. You don't show up late, you get there and you wait. So me and my drill sergeants and all our soldiers are out there, and we're out there first. There's over 1,500 people in this battalion. It's kind of a cold and nasty day in December. So the buses show up to take the guys to the airport. And the battalion commander overheard one of the drill sergeants, one of my drill sergeants, say, "Delta Company on the bus first." The colonel blew a gasket. He grabbed me and just started chewing me out. We had just switched to the battle dress uniform, the one that had camouflage on it. I tried to blend in with the trees so hard, and it didn't work. And in front of over 1,500 people, I was getting my butt handed to me. And it just kept going and going and going. And I look back at it, I laugh. Because that colonel is like my dad to me today. But I am so thankful that we didn't have YouTube back then. Because it would have been a hot topic that day and months after. It's about treating everybody fairly. People want to say, treat them all equal. You really can't. Because no two situations are equal. There's always a different variable in it. And the variables all have different weights. So all people want, all they deserve, and all they should get is fair treatment. And how hard you are as a leader doesn't matter to them as long as you are fair to everybody. This is a time in our society where we need to be ever more intolerant of drug and alcohol abuse and sexual harassment and sexual abuse. We can't tolerate it in any organization. It's about allowing people to do their job without making honest mistakes, without worrying about the honest mistakes. So, to keep it simple for the guys that work with me, I just say, this is a road. There's a white line on this side, there's a white line on this side. I don't care about the two yellow lines in the middle. Don't cross the white lines. This one is don't do anything illegal or immoral. This one is don't get anybody hurt in what you're doing. If we make a mistake, so what? We'll learn from it. We'll move on. So we provide IT to the Joint Staff. There's some pretty high-level guys that we support. We do stuff upgrading our systems all the time. We apply patches all the time. One of our young soldiers applied a patch and caused an outage. The two colonels that were in the chain between him and me and the senior executive guys were kind of panicking. Well, there was an Army warrant officer that said to one of them colonels while they're discussing this and just figuring out how they're going to report it. The warrant officer said, "Hey, did you go over there and put your arm around him and say, thanks, you did the right thing? We'll be all right." And they just kind of looked at him. He said, "I'm not kidding. I'm not joking around." We don't want to stifle what that soldier's doing. We don't want them to have to second guess everything they're doing. They know the consequences of what they do, and if we hammer them, they're not going to do what we need them to do. It's about working hard, doing good, and having fun. Things are going to go wrong in our lives, but they're never as bad as we think. We just need to lean into them. One time, a really impressive Marine lawyer was talking to me, and he said, "Hey, if somebody ever does something and really torques you off, just sets you off, stay cool. Tell them this is so serious that both of us are going to think about this overnight. Be in my office at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Got that? And then go home and think and write. Write the notes about what you're going to talk about the next day with this guy or gal. And have them there for when you talk to them. It's always with dignity and respect, and you will cool down. If you say something out of anger, you can't pull it back. And it's going to come back and bite us if we do that. So when you're doing this, they're going to be standing there or sitting there talking to you. And if they don't take notes, write down on your notes, no notes taken. Because if they go and complain to somebody and you get investigated over it, you're just going to go look at your calendar and say, yep, that was this day. Pull out your notes. Yep, this is the thing. These are the things I talked about on these days. And oh, by the way, they didn't take any notes. It kind of deflates their argument. And that's probably the wrong word to use around here with the Patriots right down the street. But I still think the same way. Some of us go through life with a plan. We're going to get this job first. We're going to live here. We're going to do this. Then we're going to get that job. Then. And what happens if the train falls off that planned track? It'll be all right. We'll take the job that we get. The key is to not grouse about it, but to bloom where you're planted. Make the most out of whatever you've got. And some people have those plans and it's based on ego. And there's two thoughts about ego. My thought is ego is bad. Take your ego, put it in an envelope, and find a post office box someplace. There is no address on the envelope, no return address. And never walk close to that post office box again. Ego sometimes causes people to do things they wouldn't do. Sometimes causes people to be arrogant. I paid for it in spades in a wrestling tournament in front of Dan Gable, Chris Taylor, and both Peterson brothers. It was a known fact that I was going to win that tournament. I got pinned in the first match in less than 60 seconds by a kid named Zero. I ain't forgetting about that. That said, some of the best leaders I've ever worked for, in fact, the best boss I've ever had, believes that ego is good. We all have ego, and it all helps us do what we need to do. We just need to manage it the correct way. Every one of us is an author. Be an author. Now, the book we write is either mental or physical. The book is on leadership. It consists of 2 volumes. The first, the don'ts. And it's the thick volume. Something just has to be minor league stupid or dumb or provide unintended consequences. And we say, wow, I'm not doing that. But something has to be major league good to say, I'm going to do that. Calm, relaxed leaders are the best. Everybody wants to be one. We're not all one. I'm not one. I'll never be one. I have a type A personality. I have a temper. But one view is to talk to people about that. To get their feedback on what they see in you as a leader. To tell them what sets you off, what makes you happy, and what your command or leadership philosophy is. And then, when stuff doesn't go right, sometimes they can look at it and say, well, that was a number 10, I shouldn't have tried that one. They'll have the discussions with their buddies. That said, there's an elasticity that's needed with being a leader. We need to be able to stretch to meet the situations. But stretching to become what's looked at as a calm, relaxed leader, you're going to snap back to center as soon as stuff gets really, really tough. And we all do that. Leadership is about knowing yourself. And some of the best feedback about self comes from others. So talking to people about you as a leader can help you learn. One thing, it's a good thing to have, it's called an elevator speech. How do you view yourself as a leader? It's probably a good thing to be able to answer. And putting it in your thoughts and having it committed to memory is a pretty good thing. What's your leadership style? How do you deal with this kind of stuff? If nothing else, you can help others. And it's a common question that's asked in job interviews. At one interview panel, I sat a panel to select a person, to be the commander of the White House Communications Agency. This is a highly sought after full colonel or Navy captain job with lots and lots of applicants. It boiled down to 2 in the final interviews. It was interesting to watch. The female Navy captain was hitting it out of the park. She brought a piece of paper and a pencil with her, and she took notes during the questions. And there were 3 of us on the panel, and panelist 1 would ask a question, and then 2, and then 3. And some of the questions had 1 and 2 parts. And the Army colonel didn't bring any notes, didn't bring any paper, didn't bring any pen. And sometimes he'd have to ask what the second part of the question was. And on more than one occasion, he didn't ask. He forgot all about it, went down the path on answering one part of it. I did that in grad school and paid the piper for that. That stopped me. When I got the cruddy grades when I was here, I was determined when I went through grad school, I would get a 4.0. I didn't get it in grad school because of one course, one exam, and I did exactly what I said this Army colonel did. So we went all the way through, and we're pretty far down the path, and it's already decided in every one of our minds she's going to get the job. And then we asked a question about leadership, and we gave them a scenario. She went back and asked us questions. What's my job? What's that person's job? What's the relationship? Had to understand it all before a decision could be made. The Army colonel, boom. I would tell him, that's unacceptable. You go back in your room, stay there, I'm reporting it. That got him the job. We need to know how to do an interview and do it right, because sometimes you only get one chance. Leadership is about a command climate. There was a 4-star, Larry Ellis. He was talking to us one time, and he said, it's all about climate. There was a 4-star named John Hendricks. He broke it down into 5 critical questions that we have to ask ourselves. 5 critical choices that we ought to make that determine our organizational climate. We have a choice between trust and invulnerability. It's all about trust. We have a choice between conflict and harmony. And that's one that it varies. But the most successful guys appear to pick conflict, because conflict is good. We don't want a bunch of people saying, wow, that's a great idea, boss. Let's just go do it. We need to have intellectual feedback. We need to sometimes have heated discussions on why an idea isn't good, why we shouldn't do it. And then once we make a decision, we don't ever circle back like a battalion run to pick up stragglers. We violently execute and move out. We have a choice between clarity and certainty. A lot of people want to stick around and get certainty before they make a decision. If we wait for certainty, we don't have to make many. They make themselves. The decisions are made by themselves by waiting for certainty. If we go to clarity, we can do a whole lot more and a whole lot faster. Each and every one of us carries a gut around with us, a gut full of experience. Our gut tells us when we have enough information to make a decision. We make it, we move out. It's about accountability versus popularity, and it is all about accountability. And it's about results versus status. It's about results. Some say, so what characteristics are important for leadership that mark somebody that's got potential? It's confidence, it's competence, it's courage, and it's decisiveness. Confidence comes from experience, from doing. In Afghanistan, we were always behind as the IT guys. Sunday mornings, they tried to have a downtime for people to get stuff done, to spend time going to church, to spend time taking care of personal stuff. As the comm guys, we were always out doing something. So I would be out with the guys, and we'd be in ditches digging to lay cable. So one day we're out there and it's hot. We all got our patrol caps on to keep the sun out of our face. We all got our blouse tops off and we got t-shirts on and we're just out there digging. And you get these smart aleck guys that'll come by and kick a little dirt in a hole while some signal guy is in there digging the hole. And I just stand up and look at them and they'd see the eagle looking at them and then they'd kind of cower and walk away. And my guys were just hoping somebody would do that. So I'm standing in a chow line later that day, one day, and this Special Forces soldier says to me, "Sir, I saw you in a hole digging ditches this morning. Why is that?" And there's one reason. I'm a soldier. I want to be there with my guys doing what they do. Confidence. People who are nervous make people around them nervous. We need to have confidence. Competence. We need to know what we're doing. And we need to know what our limitations are, and we need to go ask when we know we're getting beyond it. We need to have the courage to stand up for our convictions and to make a decision. And then we need to be decisive. Some people look at this and say, hey, leadership, you know, that's easy for those extroverts. If we go to Myers-Briggs and look at it, we're going to find out that about half of our population are extroverts and half are introverts. There's only 1 percentage points difference based on the statistics that we pulled off Myers-Briggs just a little bit ago. It might be easier for the extrovert because they're out talking to people and get fired up by talking to people. But there's no correlation to whether a person is a better leader because they are an extrovert or an introvert. None. In fact, if you find out my Myers-Briggs type personality, you will also find out that only 2% of the officers in the United States Army have that personality. Only 2%. Leadership, the most important thing is trust and integrity. And that is gained when somebody inherently believes that you're going to do the right thing for the right reasons. Again, it's about trust in the military. It's about listening. We're gifted. We're each born with 2 ears and 1 mouth for one reason, so we can use them at least in that way. Now, sometimes people will tell me, particularly when I was younger, hey, Bowman, you just let your alligator mouth outpower your canary brain. And after it happens, you know it happened. All of us are going to fail. But we learn more from failure than we do from success. So people will ask you sometimes, what's your greatest failure? Probably ought to know that too. My greatest failure as a person was not going home when I could have gone home. I didn't go home and visit my parents when I could have. My dad died when I was a second lieutenant. My mom died while I was in Saudi Arabia as a battalion commander. I didn't spend enough time at home. I should have. We can't make that stuff up. If you got time, spend it with family. And then, if they ask about, okay, yeah, so what's a professional thing that you did that didn't work out so right? One time as a battalion commander, we're in the Middle East. We had money from our major command, a 2-star headquarters, to do something. We were giving it to this other organization for them to do it for us. They were a foreign military sales organization. We had operations and maintenance money. We call them colors of money. You have procurement money, and you have research, development, test, and evaluation money. You can't cross those lines with the different types of money. I found out that they were going to take our operations and maintenance money, run it in the front door of their organization, and out the back door as colorless money. So I called the major up who was in charge of this program to say, hey man, we can't do that. He was on the phone. But I'm the commo guy, so I got precedence on my phone, so I hit flash override, blew him off his phone, called him back. He didn't like that. And I explained to him we weren't going to do that. And then I called his full colonel boss up. I'm a lieutenant colonel at the time, and told him what I did. Well, he got a little bit different story from his guy. I made a mortal enemy of that colonel. The net result of that had bad implications on my unit. My battalion XO, one of the greatest leaders I've ever worked with, was grabbed by that colonel one time and said, "Hey, you know I don't like your battalion commander. Watch out for ricocheting rounds." So the way I handled that put duress on my unit. I could have handled it so much better if I had just cooled down and handled it right. So flash forward a couple of years. I'm in a full colonel command job. I'm not actually promoted yet, but I'm wearing a rank. We call it frocked. So you have all the responsibility and authority, but you don't get to pay for it. So I'm sitting there in the Pentagon, and I'm there, and I'm checking out of a place, and I see that colonel walking by. And my alligator mouth is getting ready to go. So I finish paying, and I start walking out, and I said, "Hey, forget it, buddy. There's nothing good that can come out of that. Let it go." Probably one of the smarter moves I've made. We as leaders need to all change with the times. The way it was in Nam doesn't matter today. There's lessons we could learn from then, and we can apply them to today, but we need to think about it. We need to apply them. We need not discount ideas and change from today. We need to look at it, because dealing with the young guys, I talked about me as a young guy and my dad saying, "Don't go infantry, don't go airborne," and doing just that. Well, young guys don't like to be, and girls, don't like to be told what to do. When you're 16 to about 22, your parents get stupid. It happens to everybody. And the interesting part is, those are the lieutenants we're bringing into our units. So the brigade I took over, when I got there, was 28% fill on the lieutenants. That ain't good. Well, the reason it was like that is because the former commander was changing their assignments for them and deciding they couldn't do certain things because it impacted the mission. And they would vote with their feet. When they get the opportunity, they'd leave. And nobody could talk to this guy and get him to listen. So the assignments person said, "Well, I'll fix this problem." And she just shut off the flow of lieutenants going to that brigade. So we made a phone call. We went up to 100% on the lieutenants. It's about mentorship. We had to have a mentorship program. And I anguished about this because I didn't have a mentor. You should have a mentor. So what the heck is a mentor? Is it like a guidance counselor in high school? I mean, everyone that I had thought I was an idiot, and I just knew that they didn't care for me. Nah, that doesn't work, right? Well, maybe it's like a thesis advisor in grad school. We're part of that one. We pick them. If we pick a guy or gal and it doesn't work out right, we're part of the problem. So what we did is we decided, okay, all you majors, you're going to be mentors for the lieutenants. And we're not going to assign them. They're going to pick who they want. Now, this really made the majors nervous when this was happening. Oh boy, this is a way Bowman's going to grade us again. So I had to tell our personnel person, a major, "Hey, Jackie, I'm not tracking this. I'm not tracking it at all. I want these guys to do it. So set it up. We're going to the chapel. Each of the majors will come in and give a 3 to 5 minute presentation on who they are as a person. And then the lieutenants will take a 3x5 card. Could be done with iPhone today, but we didn't have them. And they will write down their top 3 choices. So in the walking around and talking to the people aspect, I'd catch the lieutenants and say, "Hey, who's your mentor?" "Well, why'd you pick them?" "Well, he's married to another service member. I might be too." "Why'd you pick that guy?" "My buddy said he's a good guy." Those are 2 key independent variables they used and picked in their mentor that we wouldn't even thought of. We might have said, "Hey, this guy went to West Point. This lieutenant went to West Point. This guy only went to West Point because he didn't have money to pay for school, wouldn't have gotten an education, and he came in the Army. This lieutenant, he might be 5th generation West Point." That's not an automatic mix there. You can't assume that stuff. They need to pick. And then we gave them an escape clause. We said, hey, look, if you decide after 6 months this ain't working, pick another one. So at the end of brigade command, I walked in, I said, hey, Jackie, I want to see the list of who was a mentor and who they were mentors to. She goes, sir, come on, you told us you wouldn't do that. I said, look, you're the one. I have done, the personnel person, I have done all the ratings on everybody. It's all said, it's done, it's in concrete. This is just 360 feedback from me. I know what I thought about all the majors. I would like to know what the lieutenants thought. And it was interesting. All but one, we had the exact same thoughts. And the one that we didn't have the same thoughts with was just a great basic leader, but couldn't really adapt with the time. So it was really, really interesting to watch that. So how have things changed for the digital age? People expect decisions a whole lot quicker. Hey, I send you an email, I sent you a text, what's the answer? There's no inbox anymore, it's a digital inbox. It's expected that you're going to do it. We get emails from everybody all the time. We need to respond quicker. That said, with social media out there and all the concerns, the YouTube, the video, the email, the chat, the Snapchat, we need to be careful what's out there. That stuff is permanent. It's absolutely permanent. We need to be careful with our passwords and all that stuff. I had a friend of mine, he called me up, he says, hey, I need to ask you a question. He goes, how do you store your passwords? What's your recommendation? He says, what kind of file do you put them in? How do you encrypt it? I said, I put them in a drawer. They're written on a piece of paper. None of that's going on my computer, because anything I put on that computer, somebody else has access to. And they have access to yours too. And it's a pain to change, but change. There's nothing sacred about it. You know, people look at it and, yeah, well, I'm using my fingerprint to log on to stuff nowadays. With 3D printing, I can have your fingerprint in a real short period of time, and it's indistinguishable from yours. Industry's looking at it, and they're saying, well, what should we use for two-factor authentication? Retina scans, they're pretty good. What about individual heart rates? They're pretty good too. Each individual heart rate, no matter how much you're amped up, is like a snowflake. They're all different. There's change coming to our world, and it's coming fast. There's change in the vehicles. My wife just got a new car, and the car dealer, of course, are trying to sell you stuff, but you wait too long in between getting cars. Holy mackerel. We're still figuring out stuff on that car. I mean, it's scary. So a friend of mine, we were out in Silicon Valley last week. A friend of mine's wife picked us up at Dulles, and she got the same car that my wife has and my daughter has, and she loves it. So we're heading out of Dulles, and all of a sudden, ding, ding, ding. That's a speed warning signal. It's set for 70. That's pretty interesting. Ours doesn't do that. I said, hey, Marshall, what's up with that? He goes, yeah, I said it first thing. We need to adapt with the times. We need to be more responsive. But in being responsive, here's one more quick kind of story. What goes in email, we ought to be okay with sending it to our mom or having it written up in the Washington Post. And I know about some embarrassing emails that have landed in the Washington Post that came from a couple of colonels having an argument over email. So I'm that frock colonel. I'm a little full of myself. It's about 6:45 at night. I'm at the office, not because I'm real dedicated. I'm picking up the kids at gymnastics, and they finished at 7:30, and it's closer to the Pentagon than it is to our house. So I'm there, and it's a continuing resolution. We don't have our budget yet, so we're getting it parsed out to us. I run ops in the National Military Command Center. We have contracts. We have TS-cleared individuals, top-secret cleared individuals that cannot be replaced. And we get 6 weeks of funding. And what happens if I gap that pay one day for one of them guys? I'm going to lose them, and I'm not going to be able to grow another one for years. And I ain't going to get them back. So then I said, okay, what did engineering get? Well, they got their whole first quarter. And then I look a little further and I see programs. They got their whole first 2 quarters. So I sent an email to this friend of mine who's a colonel. I said, what the heck? Our entire reputation as an organization, all 6,600 of us, is based on ops. If we flunk ops, we flunk everything. Engineering, we've never delivered anything on time anyway. So who's going to say something if we're late again? And programs, what the hell do they do? Somebody ought to audit them. So this colonel sends it to his SES 6 boss, who's been in SES since the 70s. I didn't know about it. The chief of staff, a Navy captain, called me in the next day. He said, hey, Mark, you really teed off Miss McCoy. Put your greens on and go down there and apologize. So I did. I walked in and I apologized for being a maverick. And she said, Mark, don't change. But let me ask you a question. How many emails do you get from me? How many do you see that I write? I said, not many, ma'am. Less than a handful in the whole time we've been here. She goes, that's for a reason. Use the phone. But don't use the phone in the way I've talked to you about using it in the past. And a couple of final thoughts, and then we'll finish this, because when I used to sit in venues like this, particularly in the second half, I used to be a PT nut, and I would see how low I could get my pulse. So I would sit there in a semi-coma and aim for the low 30s. Sometime in our life, we're going to get, or we've already had, something that's going to come to us and it's going to look like we have a choice about being a good leader and about being a good person. Go with being a good person. It's the right choice every time. When I was here as a junior, I was a first sergeant. And the rooks report to you on the first day. And it's a significant emotional event for them the entire time. And I had this big football player come in, and he can't stop crying. I said, shut the door. Sit down. What happened? This guy, he was a sergeant major or something, was chewing me out there, and I've never been treated like that before in my life. I don't know what to do. I said, you're okay, man. There's nothing wrong with you. He's a jerk, and we all know it. You'll be fine. Just sit here and calm down. And they're all going to wonder what's happening in here. And when you leave, nobody's going to know, because I'm not saying anything. The only way anybody's going to find out about this is for you to tell them. He would have left. I still remember his face. I still remember the tears. I don't remember his name. Be a good person. Thank you for your time. Thanks for picking Norwich. It's been an honor to speak with you today, and I wish each and every one of you the best of luck in your journey on learning to lead better, and leading to serve. Thanks.
Well, thank you, folks. We have time for some questions. We have a microphone on my right and left. We'll have students to the left, and other members of the community and public that would like to ask some questions to the right. But I'll start with a general question about how leaders today, we can talk about email is one of those digital inputs that we get perhaps too much of, but the input and influx of information generally that's available. You'd mentioned 90% of the data that we have today not existing 2 years ago, and the numbers are geometrically astonishing, the amount of data and information that we're producing. How can an effective leader in that environment, where we're deluged with email and knowledge of various types, kind of triage that? How might we adapt?
The way my approach is to that, and several of my friends, is we get tons of email, and a lot of it we don't read. So if I run into somebody and I see them and it's not going to click to me who they were or where we met, I tell them, put something in the subject that's interesting and going to get my attention. And leading by email, there was, when we first started using computers, a friend of mine, he was a company commander, a good company commander, he got all wrapped up in computers. He was an infantry guy, a ranger. He was a headquarters company commander in an infantry unit. And he got this brilliant idea that he was going to automate his property book. Well, he spent so much time loading all that stuff into a computer, and back then it was far harder than it is today. He wasn't doing a good job as a leader. Leader is getting out and walking around. Leader is figuring out what the pulse of your people is. It's about having an open door policy so people can come talk to you. There was this kid one time, he was a lieutenant in our brigade, and he wanted to come see me on the open door policy. So I asked the guys, what's he want to come talk to me about? Well, his battalion commander told him he could not go try out for the All-Army soccer team. I said, well, and this is to Jackie, our one. I said, I'm not going to see him. Tell him he can go. So, without talking to him, without talking to his battalion commander, I told him to go. Fast forward a few months, we're deployed, we're in, and he showed up and he took a job in Kuwait. And it was one night, and he comes in and he said, hey sir, I want to say thanks. I said, for what? He said, for letting me go. I said, that was a no-brainer. You're a walking, talking advertisement for our Army going out and doing that. How did you do? He goes, we won. We won the inter-service championship. I said, what's wrong with ATQ? Answer the question. I said, how did you do? Well, I scored the winning goal in the last 2 games and several others. But the reason I came to say thanks to you is because when I was a PFC, a private first class, in a National Guard unit, my commander wouldn't let me go because I was too mission essential. So when we get the opportunity to let somebody go do something for professional development, we ought to do that. But the people we select to do that, it ought to hurt. There ought to be pain in those people going out and getting that additional education or getting that additional opportunity. They ought to be our best because they are, in fact, ambassadors. So what I just demonstrated there is when media asks you a question, ATQ, answer the question, plus send a message. Who?
Thank you. We have the opportunity. We have the microphones. There we go. And please state your name and program.
Al Armstrong. I'm with the diplomacy program. I work for the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. We have an unclassed network. We have a secret network. We have a top secret network. We have passwords for all of those. We have certain websites, SharePoint sites, various programs with all different passwords. Like 14 minimum characters, 1 upper, 1 lower. Use numbers, special characters. They can't spell words. And you add these up, and I have to keep a list like you in my drawer, which they also tell us we're not supposed to do. Where do you see the future of our security for access? Are we ever going to get to a biometrics program or a single, more secure way of maintaining this kind of information technology?
I see us moving forward with the times. By the way, Orrin Mills and SES, senior executive service member, is a classmate of mine, former infantry officer, works with you. So when you run into him or see him, tell him we said, hey, 2 of his kids went to school here as well. Where I see it going is two-factor authentication. We have a CAC card, a Common Access card now, which has credentials on it that are used to authenticate who we are as a person. So we have a PIN and a hard token. We have a different token for the secure internet. We're going to evolve past that. But before we get totally past that, and I got into a discussion with some senior leaders, because I want to have email for life for retired civil servants and military folks, so that we can stay on a system and can continue to contribute, so that we can continue to give back. It's something that we're probably going to have to pay a commercial provider for, and I want to do it with a CAC card. I'm getting a whole lot of pushback, and people are telling me, hey, use your fingerprint to do that. So in a senior meeting with people senior to me, one guy said, you know, I'm not a real fan of the CAC card. My wife on her iPad uses her fingerprint. I said, yes, sir. I got that out of the agency I'm working with to get these accounts. And I said, we don't need to leap ahead too far and get to the bleeding edge of technology on this one. We need to go with something that's proven and that works. And you know, everybody says it works with a fingerprint. Well, next time you get stopped by a policeman and he comes up, just hang your finger out the window and tell him to read your fingerprint and tell you who you are. How's that going to go for you? Now, that's being kind of flippant, but the fingerprint allows you to log on to that particular system. It doesn't allow you to jump to the next. So MyPay, VA, those are all required two-factor authentication. So we're going to go to that. And in the talk, I mentioned what they were working on in Silicon Valley with the heartbeat and with the retina and the iris. There's much better ways to do this, but this is something we need to be concerned about. Our networks are not secure. You can read about people getting into them every day. Why work for something if you can steal it? There's a whole lot of people collecting a lot of stuff. Security is an interesting thing for me, and we've assumed a lot of stuff, and we ought not to. So the Army, I was a company commander as a young guy. I was sitting in the Signal Officer Advanced course. I'd never gone to a signal school in my life. I was there for 2 weeks, and they yanked me out. They said, hey, you did everything you need to do to make major, so we're going to send you to training with industry. So I went to Southern California, lived in Redondo Beach, worked in Torrance, grew my hair long until the colonel caught me. And at Magnavox, you could go park your car in the parking lot, walk in through the front door, flash a badge at somebody, you're in. So I'm out driving around. I'm into old cars. I'm out driving around in L.A., and I wanted to turn around, so I pulled into Mattel to turn around in their parking lot. You can't even get in their parking lot at Mattel. Now, Mattel is worried about somebody stealing the next design to the Frisbee or something like that. And here we have anti-jam satellite modems that we're building for DOD. Top secret programs, and it was easier to get in. I was kind of surprised about that and kind of stunned. But I am also stunned at the lack of security that people do and how easy it is to break a password. They're a pain, and they need to be a pain for a reason. So we're moving forward on it. I think the steps are going to be slow. The information assurance guys, we call them IA. I usually refer to them as NO because that's all they ever tell me when I want to do something is no, you can't do that. But the good part is they're not the final decision. It's the commander that makes the final decisions. It's all based on risk. But thanks for asking that question. Each and every one of us is responsible for network hygiene and what we put on Facebook, YouTube, what we share. You see people putting announcements on Facebook, hey, yeah, I'm getting ready to go on vacation. We're going to Hawaii. The entire family's going to be there. Well, you just told the criminal you're not going to be at your house for however long you're going to go. There's things that we ought to put on LinkedIn. So a friend of mine, a high school friend of mine, worked at LinkedIn. And I said to her, hey, I'd like to talk to your security guy because I'm not real comfortable with that. I never got to talk to him, ever. People put too much stuff on LinkedIn. We need to be smart about what we put in there. You need to have the accounts to get the jobs. People use it for checks. Probably not the best thing for you to do, to be an IT guy and say you don't trust it, because you sound like a technical Neanderthal. But we really, really, really need to be careful about what we do. Thanks.
I'll ask another question about what you might see coming down the road. Certainly technology poses challenges for leaders from many of the dimensions that you've discussed, but certainly also how in leadership positions the demands of paying for the technology and how much that technology and the decisions you might have to make to weigh the cost relative to your overall agency budget, the effectiveness of the organization, how it's going to be applied. There's a whole series of other technical aspects as well, and I think it's becoming increasingly hard. It's been difficult for leaders of all organizations to have to deal with that. I don't know if you have any thoughts on what some of the technologies are that you may be seeing in the future that might affect that.
Thanks. There's a lot out there and a lot we could adapt. It all costs money. Everybody wants to sell it to us. We've made significant changes in our organization in technology and the way we do business. And we haven't asked for one single extra cent to do it. It requires being smart about what we do. It requires us to look at stuff and say, hey, what's our core competency anyway? Why does the Joint Staff run its own email system? Because we can? Because we have? That's not good enough. I worked on enterprise email when I worked in the Army, and we did the cost-benefit analysis, got called over to Congress, had to justify it and brief it several times. There's no need to do another cost-benefit analysis for the Joint Staff. Showed up, we did it. And then the question is, if it's good enough for the Chairman and the Joint Chiefs of Staff, why is it not good enough for you? And then why do we need to have all these thick clients, regular PCs sitting under everybody's desk? Why don't we move to thin client? Why don't we do that? We did. We will. And people, it's kind of interesting. We've done it in other places where we're at. You get these guys that say, hey, I'm a power user, I can't do that. Okay, you're an exec for a 2-star. You run his email, you run your email, you do some PowerPoint briefs, and you might do an Excel spreadsheet. So as IT guys, we just decided they're not, but we'll make them happy. They'll get a thick box with a thin client inside it. They'll never be the wiser. That's the way we did it. The thing that I see as a challenge is getting and recruiting and retaining the people. And getting them continually trained and jazzed about their job. It's about changing the way we look at stuff, the way we look at a career. What's mandatory? Does somebody who is a cyber expert really need to be a company commander? We tried this a number of years ago. We had to go brief senior leadership, the Chief of Staff, that we wanted GS-14s, and it's pretty high in the GS system. It only goes up to 15. We wanted 3 of them as technical 14s. I was going to lose them. They're 13s. They don't make enough money for that in D.C. But they don't need to be leaders. They don't want to be leaders. They can make the computer stand up and get in formation when they want them to. That's what we needed. So it was approved, and we did that. We need to look at things a little bit differently for those guys. We need to treat them a little bit differently. We need to be able to let them do things from where they want to work. We need to be flexible. We don't need to be managing people by time card or button seat, however you want to look at it. It's about product. It's about what they do. So my view is it isn't hard to modernize. You just need to convince leadership that that's the right thing to do and then just go for it. And don't do it by asking for extra money. We spend in DOD upwards of $30 billion a year in IT. If we can't figure out with that much money on how to be secure, we got a problem. But we need to change. Next question.
General, my name is Jack Siegel. I'm a State Department guy. We met at the gym this morning, actually. For these graduates who are coming out of this terrific institution, I see ahead of them assignments increasingly to joint and combined operations, particularly operations with foreign countries, and I count the State Department among that. I wonder if you'd talk a bit about the leadership challenges that you see ahead for them in dealing with multinational operations.
It's interesting how you kind of lump the State Department in there with foreign countries. I don't know if I disagree. That looks and sounds like it might be a hard problem. How do you deal with these coalition members? We were in Afghanistan, and we got a platoon of Canadian cable dogs with us. And the two-star that I worked for in my peacetime headquarters came to visit. And the Canadians had just gotten there, so he comes in, everybody comes in at night, we get him a night's sleep. We're coming out of the chow hall in the morning, we go by this big hole with comms in it, and there's Canadians in there with Americans. And he just, wow, I can't believe this. I can't believe they're already working together like that. These are like kids with toys in a sandbox. They want to work together, they want to play together. In my life, I've been lucky, and I've gotten to work with coalition partner members from bunches of nations. I've been to Moscow to work the hotline a couple of times. It's fun to work with the coalition partners. We have some partners that are so close to us, the Five Eyes guys, which is the Canadians, the New Zealand guys, the Australians, and the UK. We are so close to those guys. In fact, we just upgraded our comms capability with them so that my boss can send a note off our national secret terminal direct to his counterpart in any one of those other 4 countries, and they receive it on their national secret terminal. There's a desire, a want, a need, a critical requirement for us to work together, and we do that. The State Department is out there with them every day. When we were in Afghanistan, the ambassador came back and he said to us after we got there, he goes, before you guys got here, we used to just sit around and look at the walls. Now we got comms, we can call anybody. We need to be careful when we go into the different countries because we're going to get collected on. It's an easier place for people to exploit us than it is here on our soil. We all have same concerns about IP theft, computer hacking. There isn't a nation that doesn't want to play with us on learning more about it. They want to come and share with us. That is the way we're going to do business in the future. Our Army will never go fight a war as the Army again, alone. It'll go as a joint force, but we won't go just as a joint force either, as a single nation. We will go with coalition partners. We will set up mission partner environments. We set one up in Afghanistan for the mission partners there. It was kind of interesting. We had 2 Army lieutenant colonels, Wills and Hoyt. They had this idea about the Afghan mission network. They said, hey, they told me about it. That sounds good. I said, go see what you can work with NATO. Usually with NATO, people say you measure progress in decades. They had agreement out of NATO and money out of NATO before I had U.S. approval to go ahead. That's the desire we have from partner nations on wanting to share. And we have to share. Because, if there's 4 of us in a Hummer and we're out someplace and one of us has intel that we ought not to take that road again today, we ought to go this way, we're going to share it. We're going to share the guys. And it's a bond that we have as human beings. But we have laws that tell us we can't tell them the source. I'm okay not telling them the source, but I'm going to say, hey, I don't think we ought to go that way today. We are going to work together. We're going to work really, really close. We're really close with the State Department on comms. The number 3 guy on the joint staff is the assistant to the chairman. That guy has 2 jobs, head of the Middle East peace process, and he also travels with Secretary of State. He's the military rep that travels. So we're close. We're sharing networks. It's just the right way to go. Okay, yes, sir.
Hello. Good morning, General. Eric Gazzola with the Diplomacy Program. Thank you so much for taking the time to come out and talk to us here. My question has to do with leadership and how it has evolved from the analog to the excuse me, to the digital spectrum. What specific skills, traits, characteristics do you not see in younger company grade officers coming in that you you wish they had coming in now?
The young guys coming in today are so much better than I ever was. The issues with today is you can get in a lot more trouble a lot faster than we did. Not because there's a lot more lawyers, which I'm sure there are, but because everything is digital. I don't see any real difference there. I really don't. I see them starting so much further ahead than us. Now, I can tell you after more than a decade of war, our middle leadership has atrophied in certain areas. They don't know how to run a training meeting. They don't know how to do a budget. They don't know supply accountability because stuff used to get written off as wartime losses. They don't know how to, for IT guys, they didn't know how to install comms in a big way. They would just fall in on stuff that's already there and make it better. And they did that. And that was fine for the environment that we were in. But it's time that we go back and we get into the basics. And with decrease in budgets, we're going to spend a whole lot more time in garrison and doing those kind of things. We're going to come right back and get it. It's not a lost art. There's guys that are lieutenant colonels today that did it when they were lieutenants. It's going to come back, and they're going to learn from each other. And it's kind of interesting. We're talking about standing up a high-tech unit in Silicon Valley. And you get 2 types of thinkers. You get the linear thinker and the one that just doesn't worry about the line or the box that they're supposed to be thinking in. So there's concern that you're going to hire this guy and he's probably going to be a junior enlisted or a junior officer guy, and he's already started up 2 companies and sold them, and he's a multi-billionaire, but he wants to give back. How's that going to work with the battalion commander? Getting told what to do by this other guy. That's not a new problem. It's not a problem. It's a benefit. We have that every day in the reserves and the National Guard. So whoever the boss is on the weekend, he might be working for the guy that's a sergeant on the weekend. The boss on the weekend during the week works for the sergeant. That's not who owns the company. It's not a problem. I mean, it's a benefit. I'm not an eternal optimist. That said, I can't stand on a Debbie Downer or negative Ned kind of guy, because they draw everybody down. They suck the oxygen out of every positive thing going on. Expert problem identifiers don't help any of us. We need to look for solutions and work together. So one last parting comment. When we identify a problem, it's good to also think about solutions. Because when somebody comes and talks to an old guy, particularly this old guy, the first question is, so what do you think we ought to do about it? And getting them to come talk early is good. Because there's a lot more options the earlier we talk. Again, best of luck to all of you. Thanks so much. I hope that someone got into the low 30s with your pulse rate in here, if that was your objective. But it was an honor to be here with you. Thanks.